Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. You are welcome to this episode of Sharia Intelligence, where we will be carrying on the subject of the maqasid of Sharia, looking at the higher intents and objectives of Sharia. And today we will be looking particularly at those maqasid, those objectives, or those groups of objectives that scholars have had a near consensus over in understanding that these are text-based objectives. I am your host, Muhammad Nuruddin Lemu, and with me to discuss today's topics and the issues we will be raising are two of our distinguished facilitators, Brother Nasir Bello and Brother Ibrahim Bello. You are both most welcome.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to start with Malam Ibrahim. One of those maqasid of Sharia that scholars seem to have a consensus over when they talk about the Daruriyat Hamsa is the preservation of faith, or Hifdhuddin, also understood to be not just protecting the faith but also promoting the faith. What are the kinds of evidence that scholars bring to conclude that the Quran and Sunnah definitely want us to realize this objective?
Now, Hifdhuddin meaning protection, promotion and preservation of religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in Quran, chapter 2, that يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اعْبُدُوا رَبَّكُمُ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. O you humanity, worship your Lord who created you and those before you, so that you might be saved from his punishment, so that you might become pious. These are two interpretations given. Allah further explained that why you need, or why you desire, he deserves to be worshipped. He said, الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً وَأَنزَلَ لَكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَندَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Same God he is calling you to worship is الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا. He is the one that has made the earth flat and flexible for you to cultivate and to live on. It's not mountainous and rocky that you find it difficult to process. وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً. He made the sky to be like roof, a cover protecting you. وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً. He sent down rain and make it as a source of getting your fruits and vegetables and food and sustenance generally. Allah now say, if you know all of this, which of course is difficult for any sound mind, hearing all of these things, to doubt God. Actually, it's true. It's God that did them. That's sort of those kind of revelations that on hearing them, even if you arrogantly deny, but your conscience will like, it's true, it's true, it's true. So Allah says, فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. The essence of all this clarification after the introduction is that do not associate partners to God when it comes to worship, why you know that he is the only one responsible for all of this. In another verse, Allah said, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. Verily, we sent down a prophet, a messenger, in all the generations. Subhanallah. This is what God says. And their message was uniform. Worship God and avoid demigods, what you can call other gods. وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. And many other verses of Quran, many, really many. وَعَبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. You know, a number of classical instructions in Quran is worship God alone. And after God, who is the next? Parents. But there should be loyalty and obedience. And a number of rulings in Islam that are meant to promote, to enhance, to nurture this worship of God. So you pray 5 times daily. You fast. You give sadaqah. You even do voluntary, supererogatory things. You do other things. All of these to nurture this faith spiritually, to develop you, to give you that spiritual immunity and to keep in touch with God at intervals. So we do azkar. More so, Islam prohibits whatever will corrupt our concepts of God. And that is basically why it prohibited associating partner with God. That's why shirk, in totality, that is why sihr, practicing of magic or sorcery, all those fetish things that make people start doubting the power of God, start arrogating the same power to other things like God, start thinking human beings can be as powerful, can kill, can give life, start having the respect and adore other people like God. Islam prohibits all of this just to protect religion. So a number of verses of Quran are there. You worship. Sometimes Islam even institutionalizes fighting when it becomes necessary to protect the integrity of Islam and Muslims. La ikraha fi din, of course, no compulsion in religion. But if somebody attack or encroach or try to wipe out Islam, then you have to stand to defend it at all costs. All of these are there to protect Islam. And there are many ahadith of the Prophet too, that you should worship Allah alone. The Prophet ﷺ says, Haqqullahi ala al-ibad, an ya'buduhu wa la yushriku bihi shay'a. The right of Allah upon His servants is that they worship Him alone, not to associate anybody with Him. And that anybody that dies on that, he has a guarantee of getting paradise. Anybody that does less than that. Also in another hadith, the Prophet said, Khamsu salawatun katabahunna Allah fi yawmin wa layla. Man hafaza alayhinna kana lahu inda Allahi ahadun an yudkhilahu al-jannah, and many of that. That these 5 daily prayers are the ones prescribed by God in a day and night. Whosoever preserve or protect them, whosoever perform them with all their terms and conditions as prescribed, has a guarantee of being admitted into paradise. And whosoever does not, why is the Prophet saying all of this? So that you protect, you preserve your iman. So the need for us to know that preservation of religion is at the core, is at the basis, is among the key essence. Allah even says among the key essence of sending all the prophets from Adam to Muhammad. That on that, they have a common message. On how and the nitty-gritty, they might differ. So this is it.
This is very useful. And I think, there you find also verses of the Quran where Allah encourages you to invite others to Allah's way. Bil hikmah wal maw'izatil hasana, with beauty, with beautiful preaching. As you've mentioned, it's not just preservation of faith, but also protection of people from being coerced into religion. So this, what you cited, no compulsion in religion, and the respect for religious freedom, the respect for people's places of worship. You can't demolish churches, you can't demolish synagogues, you can't demolish temples, etc. As Allah mentions clearly in the Quran in Surah Al-Hajj. And I think, as you've mentioned, these verses all talking about لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ, various virtues of piety, of showing compassion, of having faith in God, of never losing hope, of sabr, of patient perseverance, steadfastness on the path of truth as an objective of religion, that people never despair, la taqnatu min rahmatillah, to never to never lose hope of Allah's mercy as we go through life. And so we find this issue of spiritual growth, of what you describe as a spiritual immune system, that your conscience, your sense of Allah's presence is there as an intrinsic guide, an intrinsic motivator to keep doing good, because that's what Allah expects of you.
And the door of Allah is always open, even to sinners. This is a religion, this is Allah inviting others who have despair, who felt they are guilty of their crime. Say, Ya ibadiya alladhina asrafu ala anfusihim la taqnatu min rahmatillah. That's, don't despair, don't give up, come back. إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي If my servants ask you regarding who am I, where am I, tell them inni qarib. So this is wonderful about how Islam look at religion. And of course, Islam recognizes existence of other religion and peace, tolerance. The essence is preservation of religion, particularly in the deen in the Lahil Islam. You know, the only acceptable religion before God is Islam. But of course, it respects and preach tolerance and respect for other religions.
And had Allah willed, as He says, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. Had He willed, He would have made you all one. So this issue of respecting diversity of religion, while you believe yours is truth, you don't force others to accept, you invite them to your own, but at the same time, there's no compulsion, and you have to end with lakum dinukum waliya din. You know, you have yours, I have mine, and we carry on living peacefully with each other. Moving to the other one, the preservation of life. Malam Nasir, what kind of evidence do scholars bring? We've heard from the preservation of faith, of piety, of righteousness, so many texts to make it clear that this is a clear objective of so many verses of the Quran and Hadith. What would you share with us regarding life?
Well, I think even before getting into the discussion around preservation of life, one amazing point I always contemplate over regarding the issue of preservation of religion, and what I would think in Islamic principles and worldview, religion, the value it attached to religion, even if the religion is not Islam. I mean, remember the level of tolerance and respect that Prophet ﷺ accorded to religion and the people of religion, when he even allowed Christians to perform their service in the church. Imagine how, in the mosque. Imagine the level of tolerance and respect and accommodation. And of course, that for me is the kind of respect that Muslims should look at and think about what Rasulullah did to accommodate Christians, despite the fact that he differed with them, he disagreed with them, yet because of this idea of respect and associating significance and value to religion, he accommodated them and he allowed them to do their church service in the mosque in Medina. Another important thing that we should remember in associating or in trying to expand the scope of this understanding of protection of religion as a cardinal objective in Islam is how Islam respects people of religion, people of other religion. I mean, they are categorized as non-combatant even in a war. You don't kill them, you respect them, you treat them with the respect they deserve. You accord to them the kind of respect they deserve in their own congregation. This, I think, are some powerful examples that will help us understand the perception of Islam about religion is not just restricted to Islam as a religion, but all other religions. And again, look at how Rasulullah or even the verses of the Quran tend to differentiate people of religion with people that are worshipping idols, people that don't have religion, and tend to, give some privileges in terms of recognition and respect between them and people that are of idol worship. Now, coming back to the issue of protection and preservation and promotion of life, in Islam, generally, life is considered as a very sacred thing. And that is why you find life is valued from that of an individual or that of the others that you relate with, irrespective of their status, Muslims or non-Muslims. And if you map the Quran or the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, you would find how Rasulullah ﷺ or the verses of the Quran treats the life of a human being, how it values the life of a human being. Look at, starting with one's self, how the punishment or the repercussion for for killing oneself, suicide, being suicidal, was getting to the hellfire. Verses of the Quran talking about وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ بِكُمْ رَحِيمًا. You shouldn't kill yourself. This is a command on not to kill yourself, on understanding the sacredness, the value of your life. وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Don't throw yourself, don't waste your life. In fact, that hadith about a child that is obese, that consumes a lot, where the Prophet ﷺ said, if that killed him, he is going to the hell. Why? Because he didn't take care of himself, because life is something that is sacred and has to be taken care of. That is at the level of individual. Remember those companions that decided, because of their misunderstanding of what faith is, decided to be fasting every day, praying every night. What happened? Rasulullah ﷺ frowned at that, and he told them that your body, your own self, has right over you, so you have to respect it. So if you are looking at the discourse around the value of human life in Islamic tradition, it starts from the perspective that you don't have absolute control. You are not at liberty to treat your own self and to play with your life the way you want. Now, if you move to the next level of interaction or relationship, look at the value of Kaaba. The value of Kaaba in the Muslim tradition. But Rasulullah
in the Haram, in the mosque in Makkah.
Haram, the mosque in Makkah. Look at the value it has in Islam. But Rasulullah was very categorical that destroying Kaaba, in fact, the value of Kaaba cannot even come near the value of a human being's life, the value of a life of a human being.
One drop of blood, according to the hadith.
Exactly. And another place, the Quran tells us that the value of life, or the value of killing a soul, killing just one person, is like killing the entire humanity. Man qatala nafsan bighayri nafsin faka'annama qatala an-nasa jami'a. Whoever killed one life, one soul, without any reason, without any justification, is as if you kill the entire humanity. And he said, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا, and whoever breathe life into them, whoever support them, whoever improve their livelihood and well-being. I think this is a very important part that particularly political leaders should really pay attention to, and to really reflect over the value and the significance and the reward that is tied to that. وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. So regarding this, and look at this hadith where Rasulullah was even asked about the Muslimness, if there is anything Muslimness or the Islamicity of the value of your Islam is tied to the freedom that others have from the harms of your hand or the harm of your mouth. That is really instructive for me. So you find lots of examples around that. And if you look at the punishment, again talking about the issue of value of life and how sacred it is, look at the kind of penalties that are prescribed to people that tamper with other people's life, people that waste other people's life. Even if that life is yours. We've given examples about how the Quran or Rasulullah talked about the punishment as hellfire for somebody who killed or did something that harmed himself deliberately. We also have seen how verses of the Quran talked about the punishment is hellfire, that is in the hereafter, for somebody who killed someone for no reason. And that someone, even if he's a non-Muslim. Exactly. There is a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ talked about killing a mu'ahid. Whoever killed a mu'ahid will not even enter paradise. So these are some of the things. Now, as we said,
a mu'ahid being a non-Muslim citizen.
Yeah, a non-Muslim citizen, somebody that is a non-Muslim, but you live together in the same country. You live together. So it's about human life. It's about the value and the significance of human life. Now, another very important aspect of this protection or preservation of human life is the provisions that Islam makes regarding sustenance of a human being and human life. Look at how compensation, or sometimes as a way of making up for certain things somebody did or refused to do, the Quran will say, okay, you should feed this number of people. That is about improving livelihood. That Allah is saying now, that which is my right, I am now directing it to improving the livelihood of other people, of trying to improve the well-being of other people. Fasting being one of the most important pillars of Islam. But because in a situation where somebody is sick or is not capable health-wise to fast, despite the significance of fast, you would find Islam trying to relieve you of that despite its significance, meaning anything that would threaten the effectiveness or survival of human life, you would find Islam trying to take it away. Things that are ordinarily considered prohibited, completely prohibited, you would find Islam trying to make them permissible in a situation where not allowing access to that, in a situation of darura, in a situation of dire need, you would find Islam trying to relieve. You don't eat pork and you find yourself, eating pork is not permissible, it's haram for a Muslim, but you find yourself in a situation where you just have to eat, otherwise you are going to die. All scholars, there is consensus about the permissibility of doing that. So when it comes to human life, it value preservation of human life, about promotion of human life, you find Islam really trying to open all the necessary doors, trying to encourage, trying to promote, trying to improve. Look at the rewards that are associated with people that are committed to improving the livelihood of people in the society. Look at the case of Uthman about buying a well. Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anhu, because of the value it will add, because of the contribution it will make, it will provide to improving the livelihood of people. So these are some of the evidence you can find around in the Quran, in the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that are associated to the improvement and the preservation of life.
This is excellent, and just along that lines, if we look at those things that deal with life, we have a lot of teachings in Islam about security, punishment for brigandage, for robbery, anything that's going to threaten life, issues surrounding food security, as you've already mentioned, a lot of feeding of the poor, healthcare, searching for medicines, helping others who are in need, where somebody else's darura becomes your darura if you are the only person who can help them out of that difficulty. And probably even just from a symbolic point of view, that the value given to human life in Islam is such that if you accidentally kill somebody, so it's not your fault, you didn't plan it. A human life cannot just go as a result of your accident without your having to fast for 60 days. This understanding that human life of whatever religion is so valuable that even when a person accidentally dies as a result of, your driving, or, they made a mistake and ran in front of your car, or, that it can't just be another normal day when that type of thing happens. This honor given to the human being in Islamic teachings, the Prophet describing the worst sin is that of killing a person, and you've already alluded to a number of these type of sources of evidence. I'd like to move on to another of these maqasid, the preservation of the intellect, of the mind. Malam Nasir, what evidence is there that makes scholars conclude that the human intellect, the ability to reason, should be protected as one of the daruriyat, as one of those fundamental maqasid or objectives of the Islamic way of life, of the Quran and Sunnah?
I think it suffices to remember that the first revelation, as far as the Islamic tradition is concerned, that the first revelation to the Muslims in the Quran is speaking to the utilization of the mind. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. Read, study, reflect. That, I think, is quite instructive and very, very important. That human agency of the mind is so important so significant in the project of Islam, if you could call it a project, so much so that the first communication that Allah is actually trying to do with human beings is that appeal to their sense of, agency of human reason in the mind, to study, to read, to contemplate, to intellect, to think, and to study. Another thing that is important is, if you still go through the Quran, you would find Allah always speaking to us that we should reflect, we should think, we should do tadabbur, afala ya'qilun, when things are explained. And Allah will say, these are for people that think, people that intellect. This, I think, is demonstrating the value, the significance of the mind. At the introductory level of this very important course, we remember the metaphor of Imam Abu Hamid al-Ghazali, which also allude to the significance of the mind in trying to decipher and understand and relate with the message of Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And again, another thing that we should remember is how Islam made it a determinant in even shouldering responsibility as a human being as far as Islam is concerned, because you would find scholars talking about the responsibility of being a Muslim and being punished for doing something, or rewarded for not doing something, is tied to your discerning mind. If you are mentally affected, if you have problem, or if a child have not reached the level of intellection and reflection and understanding his responsibility, that a role of the mind, if your mind is not really active, is not functioning, you would find Islam trying to look at you as as if you don't exist. In fact,
no
legally,
responsibility,
intellectually unfit.
Legally, basically, if you are speaking legally from a really legal point of view, as if you are not alive. As if you are not alive because you don't shoulder any responsibility because of this mind that is not active, that is not in existence. Yeah. And that is why the idea of taklif, you would find scholars talking about this issue of taklif and what have you, and mind is a critical element, is a determinant in whether you now shoulder the responsibility or otherwise. And another thing, that is why you would find verses of the Quran that are speaking to, that are very critical about anything that will affect the mind. Look at the verses around the issue of intoxicant and how Quran classify them and relate them with other major sins and offenses. Look at what Allah talked about when He was talking about the prohibition of taking intoxicant. إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأظلام رجس من عمل الشيطان, and it was directly associated with shaitan. And Allah was categorical by saying فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. You should leave it. You should completely leave it, because your mind is very important. Your mind is highly valued in Islam, and anything that will distract the mind, anything that will create problem to the mind, is completely discouraged. And if you look at the life of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and see how he respects people that really appreciate the value of their minds, people of knowledge, people of understanding, even if these people are not Muslims, they are respected by Islam because of the knowledge, because of the way they are able to utilize their mind, because of the effective utilization of their mind. So the idea, the significance of mind is understood essentially in the tradition of Muslims. And in fact, you would find many scholars in Islam arguing that our growth and development as a people and our downfall as a people is tied to the way we attribute value and we respect and utilize the human mind. So I think these are some of the examples you would find from our tradition, from the Quran, from the Sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, regarding the value and the significance of the mind, and the need to preserve it, to promote it, to encourage anything that will help in promoting the mind.
Education,
of course,
search
education.
for knowledge, consult.
Imagine, remember
inquire.
what Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam did after establishing a state in Medina, when he realized that there should be communication, issues of diplomacy and interaction with other societies. He asked some of the companions to go and study this, go and learn how to speak their language.
Hebrew and
exactly.
Right.
When prisoners of war are captured, some of the prizes that are tagged, that are placed on them, is teach Muslims certain skills, so that at least that will promote their mind, that will develop them. Look at how Rasulullah asked one of his wives to go and learn skills around medicine and how to treat people. So Rasulullah and companions knows the significance of knowledge, and you will find on different occasions encouraging education, encouraging promotion of knowledge and preservation of mind.
And I think the fact that the Prophet ﷺ even said, the best among you are those who are most useful. Quran describes, has a lot of praise for those who are endowed with knowledge. And how really, if you want to be useful, the more knowledge you have about the context, the more you can fulfill your role as a Khalifa or a representative of Allah. Thank you very much. Mala Ibrahim, the other one I'd like us to look at is sometimes described by some scholars as Hifdhul Nasl, the preservation of lineage, or Hifdhul Nasab, the preservation of progeny. Ibn Ashur calls it Hifdhul Al, the preservation of the family, in that these all have something in common. What would you say regarding the certainty with which preservation of family and all that is entailed in that, how certain are we that these are maqasid based on text? What evidence is there?
Okay. Preservation of family or genealogy, really?
Yes.
Yeah, it is important for us to know that your genealogy or your family history is part of your integrity. It tells of who you are. And that's why sometimes they even combine it with honor. And it is important that people should have well-defined parents, because that is part of your description. If you are even the son of somebody else, it must be your surname. So this is very important. But not only that, so that people will have respect accorded with family history. But if a child is born outside wedlock, he doesn't have that. And to distinguish between humans and animals don't have that. And that's why a goat will have her husband as her son also. But humans are not like that. So Islam places much emphasis on this issue of family. That's why zina, illegal intercourse, is prohibited. It is human. It is part of human needs to have sexual satisfaction. But Islam designed a way it would come with honor and respect, and it will not mess up the setup of people. Most of the stigmatization that comes along with somebody is bastard, is born outside wedlock, sometimes it's demoralizing for life, even though it is not a sin. So Allah does not want that for us. So people should have it. And in fact, the Prophet ﷺ even say people should not deny who their parents are. In Islam, even if your parents are bearing a bad name, you, the son, doesn't have the right to change it. The most you can do is to change your own. And in fact, the Prophet looked at it, one of the greatest sins, like even ingrates, for one to refuse ascribing to his original father. He said, وَمَنْ انْتَسَبَ إِلَىٰ غَيْرِ أَبِيهِ فَقَدْ كَفَرَ. Of course, it's not the kufr of disbelief. But whosoever seeks to ascribe himself to other than his father has denounced the favor of God.
Major ingratitude.
It's a major ingratitude. So that is why also you have legislation surrounding marriage. You have prohibition of zina. You have institution of, indecent dressing. Respect for family history. That also parents should be responsible for their children. That women, all these laws governing dressing and chastity and modesty are all aiming at what? Preserving the family. Preserving what comes out, what is the product of it. And even the punishment for zina is there to serve as a deterrent to would-be or intending criminals in that direction. So Islam, and look at it. Nobody it's rare actually to see somebody that is proud of being born outside, wedlock.
I don't know my father.
No, it's rare to say, I am, even those who are, like, they don't want to. And in fact, we've seen situations where from the day a student gets to know that she was born outside wedlock, that stigma demoralizes her for the rest of her life. So Islam doesn't want this, and Islam respects this family history, and that people should have this kind of organized, respected with dignity. That's why Islam has this hifz al-nasl as one of the things in the core. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ will even say that Allah anallahu man la'ana waliday. Why? Allah caused the wrath of Allah should be on the person. Why? Parents are important because you are their fruits. You are the fruit of their labor and their efforts. So they deserve that respect. In fact, in the same direction, Islam challenge this thing Arabs do of at-tabanni, adopted son. You can adopt a son, but let him bear his surname. Biological, yeah. So Arabs were doing that, and Islam says no. Ud'uhum li'abaihim wa aqsatu indallah. So this is to what extent Islam is concerned about this issue of family, lineage, nasab, and whatever name it is called. They are all meant to preserve one thing. Yeah.
And I think when you look also at the laws of inheritance, how they try to keep the family together. So that instead of blaming somebody, Allah takes responsibility for how inheritance is divided. And as you've already mentioned, when we talk about the preservation and promotion of family, it's not just about you and your children, but responsibilities towards parents, responsibilities towards relatives. What we find is a lot of teachings prioritizing goodness to the family. In fact, a hadith where the Prophet measured the goodness of a person by how good that person was to his family. Khairukum khairukum li ahlikum. The best of you are those who are best to their families. We find the greatest charity is that towards the family. So this whole environment in which the most vulnerable human beings, children, grow, and as you've already mentioned, so many laws about marriage and divorce and child custody, inheritance, etc., all to ensure that there's the least amount of injustice. Whatever is going to be perpetrated, in fact, the Quran would put it, وَامْسِكُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ أَوْ فَارِقُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Either stay together married, bil ma'ruf, in an honorable, kind manner, أَوْ فَارِقُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, or divorce in an honorable, kind manner. Allah seems to be more interested in the ma'ruf of goodness, of honor, of kindness, than whether you stay together or don't stay together. This issue of ensuring a peaceful home for children, a home that is dysfunctional, can really mess up children in a very terrible way.
And you have also verses like لا تضار والدة بولدها ولا مولود له بولده.
Exactly.
Like in case of divorce, Allah still emphasized after laying out responsibilities of who takes care of maintenance, who does this. And he warned. He said, don't cheat, don't oppress a mother because of her son.
Exactly.
Nor oppress the father because of his son.
Exactly.
In another verse, he said, وَأُولُو الْأَرْحَامُ بَعْضُهُمْ أَوْلَى بِبَعْضٍ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. That family ties, people that are closely related by blood, are more deserving to one another than those that meaning the closer the better.
Exactly.
So this whole issue of family, we should look at it holistically on both sides. Children should be responsible to their parents, and parents should be responsible to their children too, because that is the nucleus of a society.
And even when we find like a lot of the encouragement of Muslims to marry and to remove obstacles that are in the way of marriage, but we also find while divorce is permissible, all sorts of peace building, sulhu, all sorts of ways to prevent divorce, because it is one of those things that is very strongly reprehensible, very disliked, except if it is absolutely necessary. But a baseless divorce is considered a sin for many. And of all contracts The Prophet ﷺ said the most deserving of respect of all contracts is that of the marriage contract. So we find this issue of ensuring that the family is a home of peace as humanly possible as we can, we can promote through laws, through cultures, through education, through whatever. I think there's nearly no doubt that Islam is interested in preserving, promoting peaceful coexistence within the home.
I think if still we still go back to history and the Sunnah of Rasulullah and his life, just to appreciate the importance of lineage and family. Look at how Rasulullah was proudly saying that Allah have chose the best of lineage for him, and he's always proud of being the son of or grandson of Abdul Muttalib. In this very, very, very popular hadith, he said, "Inna Allah astafa min waladi Ismail kinana, wastafa banu Hashim min kinana, wastafani min banu Hashim," trying to relate and link his lineage and being proud of his lineage. Sometimes he was asked, who is the greatest person, who is sort of highly respectful person, great person, Manil Akram? He said, Yusuf, Nabiyullah, Ibn Nabiyullah, Ibn Nabiyullah. And of course, he said, Yusuf, the son of a prophet of Allah, Yaqub, the grandson, the son of a prophet of Allah, Ishaq, and the grandchild of a prophet of Allah, Khalilullah, Ibrahim. I think these are traditions that are alluding to the significance of the choice of lineage for your own children, the choice of a husband and his lineage, the kind of family that you can be proud of, that you can, proudly associate yourself with. And of course, not only that, vice versa, the choice of the right wife for your own self. And beyond that, that thinking and the responsibility that shouldered on parents also to model a good example of parents to their own children, so that at least they will not leave them with a kind of parent or lineage that they cannot be happy and proud about. I mean, if you are going to make decisions, you have to remember the implication of the certain things you will do that will affect your progenies. I think these are responsibilities, because much as one will be proud of his own lineage, just like Mala Ibrahim mentioned, again, one will feel so terrible over the misgivings and some, bad attitude that were perpetrated and demonstrated by his family. So I think this is a very important point to note regarding the issue of preservation and protection of the family and lineage.
And about this issue of marrying a good spouse, a good parent for your child. So whether it's a good husband or a good wife that somebody is getting married to, and of course, just as something we all already know, Islam does not put any stigma on an illegitimate child. Absolutely. There were some Sahaba who were illegitimate, some who have embraced Islam, some who were born into Islam. وَلَا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى. You don't put a responsibility on those who don't take that responsibility.
It wasn't their sin in the first place.
It wasn't their sin in the first place, and we look at them as our brothers in faith or sisters in faith. And some people just don't have the privilege of being children of some well-known parent. Somebody is a child of a criminal, of a corrupt person, of a person in prison. At the same time, you are still grateful to Allah for who you are, and it is you who will determine what your future and what your children will be.
I think some of the issues you raised, was it yesterday, about the implication of not paying attention to this issue of preservation of family and what have you. That particular research you talked about of serial killers and how it's related to issue of broken home, I think it's really relevant to this very important discussion, and how it relates to the need for us to, it's not about the choice alone, but the way you are able to manage the family, and the way the implication of certain decisions we make in trying to preserve and maintain our family. I think these are things that are quite relevant.
Absolutely. And just to touch on that, the research was showing how the gentleman was saying, it's available online, just research on serial killers and the family background of people who have been identified as serial killers, that they all, no exception, all came from dysfunctional homes. What was interesting in the commentary on the research was that the researcher was saying he has not found any serial killer that didn't come from a dysfunctional home. But we're grateful not everybody who comes from a dysfunctional home becomes a serial killer. But the question is, what else do they become? Because a lot of them become drug addicts. A lot of them grow up as very dysfunctional people. And this is, I think, just helping us appreciate why the Quran and the Sunnah considers the family as a unit to put under, if you put it under the microscope or you look at it carefully, there's so much concern about protection of the family and values of the family and, living together and doing things together, that scholars actually put this among the Daruriyat Hamsa, one of those fundamental 5 major objectives.
Yeah, and I think still going back to that particular example or that particular research, for me, some of the lessons one can draw from this, or the question that comes to mind is, now by respecting or appreciating this particular objective or maqasid of Sharia of preservation of family, going by this research, if a Muslim society or a Muslim community becomes so serious about promotion and preservation of their own family, what will be, to what extent, how much are they saving the entire society? How many serial killers are they trying to, save the society from producing? And those that fall in between, who are not necessarily serial killers. I think these are some of the things that requires a lot of reflection, and why sometimes if the Sharia says take this thing serious, probably the implications are beyond what one can imagine.
Absolutely. And I think we will see that as we go through each of these maqasid and the relationship between one and all. It's more like a one for all and all for one, if I use that. Preservation of deen helps you hold on to preservation of the others. Preservation of life is what makes deen and the others possible. Preservation of the intellect is what makes you responsible for even deen and allowing you to fulfill other responsibilities. We've looked at this issue, and I know we could go on the role of education and search for knowledge on family, etc. I'd like us to move on to the next one, which some scholars would describe as the preservation and the promotion of dignity, hifdhul ird. What scholars would describe as the preservation and the promotion of human dignity, of ird. Malam Ibrahim, what would you tell us is the evidence for considering the preservation of human dignity as a fundamental objective or maqasid of Sharia?
Yeah, preservation of dignity is a fundamental maqasid of Sharia, because like in a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ actually view dignity as important as somebody's blood, and that attack on his dignity is like shedding his blood. In one hadith he said, kullu muslim alal muslim haramun alayhi damuhu wa maluhu wa irdu. That between Muslims, shedding their blood, tampering with their dignity or honor and wealth, they are all prohibited. The punishment for qazf, slandering, just serve as like important point. Like if somebody's dignity or honor, ird, is as important that when you slander, you fabricate a lie, false accusation of zina deserve this kind of disgrace, this kind of punishment.
80 lashes.
80 lashes in the public to serve as a deterrent to would be or intending people that want to do that. That suffices. But not that alone. Islam prohibits backbiting, slandering, gossip, and all of these things because somebody else's integrity, somebody else's honor, ird, is at stake. The whole of Surah Al-Hujurat, chapter 49 of Quran, the entirety of it, the co-subject is actually dignity. La yaskhar qawmun min qawmin. Do not mock. La tajassasu.
People.
Do not mock people.
Yeah, so also like from the, qawm can be don't insult a community.
Yeah.
Racism. And
yeah, let not a group feel because they are superior. And Allah say, Asa an yakunu khayran minhum. Wala yaghtab ba'dukum ba'da. Do not backbite. And even Allah went as far as saying, okay, ayuhibbu ahadukum an ya'kula lahma akhihi maitan. Would any one of you be comfortable to eat, to devour the flesh of his dead brother? Like, it sounds ugly, but Allah says so it is. So, la tajassasu, do not spy at one another. Ijtanibu kathiran min adh-dhanni. Avoid suspicion. All of this, what is it telling you? Somebody's dignity is at stake. So this is premium Islam places on ird, so much that a whole surah and many other verses of Quran, the Prophet will say this. Don't lie. The Prophet ﷺ say, بِحَسْبِ مْرِهِمْ مِنْ شَرٍ أَنْ يَحْقِرَ أَخَاهُ الْمُسْلِمِ. It suffices as evil for somebody to denigrate his brother, to downgrade. In another hadith he said, Al-Muslim akhul Muslim, la yazlimuhu wa la yakzibuhu wa la yahqiruhu. A Muslim should be a brother to his fellow Muslim. La yazlimuhu, you don't oppress him. Wa la yakzibuhu, you don't even belie him. You quickly jump to conclusion, you are lying. Such that kind, the Prophet is not saying kadhaba, no, don't belie him. Wa la yahqiruhu, you don't disgrace him.
And the same would apply to people of other faiths too.
Other faith, anybody. So this issue of ird, and I think this is one thing in the Muslim community. Most of the time people underrate this, literally to gossip, backbite, bring somebody's this, tell him about me and I will tell him about you. Those kind of lifestyle thing. We should know that it is not for granted in Islam. The Prophet ﷺ in one hadith will say that, Atadaruna manil muflis? Do you know who is bankrupt? The Sahaba said, of course. We know from literal definition, somebody who has gone bankrupt. He doesn't have any money, no belonging, and probably still have debt to settle. But he said, no, al-muflisu min ummati man ya'ti yawm al-qiyamati bi salatihi tamma wa zakatihi tamma. The bankrupt among my ummah is the one that will come on the day of judgment with salah complete, with zakah even paid. But what? Safaka dama hadha. He shed the blood. Akala mala hadha. He devoured somebody's wealth. Shatama hadha. He insulted. And all those things. So to tell you to what extent somebody's dignity can cost you even before God. So this issue of ird, scholars have no doubt that preservation or protection of honor is one of the greatest. In fact, Islam is even as far as saying that, look, even when somebody is guilty of committing zina, because his integrity is at stake, you need up to 4 concurrent eyewitness. And the scholars are saying, if you see him alone, and you come and say it in the public, it's cause of. You will be given 80 lashes. To tell you how important is somebody's integrity. So I think food for thought. Yeah.
This is interesting, and you want to add some.
Exactly. I'm just reflecting over one particular factor that actually elevate humanity as creatures of Allah among other creatures, is that issue of honor and dignity. Look at how Quran talked about وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, that issue of dignifying human being. And that is why if you look at the provisions of Islam regarding protection of that dignity of a human being, that you don't need to be affluent, you don't need to be wealthy, you don't need to belong to a certain family or anything. As a human being, you are dignified, and therefore there are a lot of your blood, your personality, and all other things. Islam made a provision to protect that dignity that you have as a human being. And another interesting thing, if you go further, even what makes Muslims the Khair Ummah, still it talks about issues of trying to promote and protect that dignity. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. Why? Ta'muruna bil ma'ruf. You are commanding people to do the right thing. By doing the right thing, you are trying to promote your own dignity. You are trying to align yourself with that status of elevated, creator, exalted human being. that somebody that is within the cycle of even the cycle of human being, there is certain level of dignity that Allah elevated you to, and that you are expected to assume that responsibility of maintaining it. And therefore you command people to do good, you actually command them, or you engage them, or you admonish them from doing something that is wrong, something that will touch their dignity, something that will affect their own personality, and make them people that are not respected, people that are divorced from that exalted position of elevated human being, a man of status. And because this idea of dignity is not just about religion, look at what Rasulullah said when he was asked about, when he was talking about dignity of people and their honor. He said, khiyarukum fil Islam, khiyarukum fil jahiliyyah. That people idha faqihu, again reflecting about the issue of knowledge, but not only that, recognizing the fact that beyond even issues of religion, beyond the scope of religion, that dignity that is identified with people in their own community is always respected, and again, if you remember how Rasulullah relate with leaders, people of honor, people of dignity that are coming from other societies, and how we accord to them that respect that is accorded to them is about treating people the way they are respected, even if they are your enemies. But the fact that they are, leaders in amongst their people, you see Rasulullah according to them that respect. I think this all tied to the issue of recognition that Islam has, and respect that Islam has about associating and identifying human beings with the dignity that Allah has already granted them, and the need to guide people and to always remind people to be sensitive and conscious of that particular dignity that they have, and not to do anything that will waste or trample that dignity that they are recognized and respected.
Yeah, and I think it's very clear in history, like he mentioned, that one of the features of the Prophet ﷺ is kana yakrimu karimul qawm.
Exactly.
That he do honor, respects a respected personality from any group. So if this is your leader, part of way I show I respect you too is to respect who you respect.
Exactly.
And often people will come to the Prophet from the enemies, and the Prophet will give their leader where he sits, a very strategic position to honor him. So this is very important.
This is very interesting, and it brings to mind the fact that the Prophet ﷺ once stood up out of respect for a dead Jew. Absolutely. There was a Jewish funeral procession, and this happened on more than one occasion. And in one of the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ even said, when it happens again, that's what you should do. And when he was asked, why did you stand up? The person was a dead Jew. The Prophet ﷺ asked, was he not a human being? In other words, it didn't actually matter what his religion was, but the fact that he was a human being is what matters. I think this idea, even we find it in istishab, the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. That human beings who have been honored by Allah, when Allah is saying angels to bow down to Adam, honoring our great-grandfather, but also using words of honor. When talking to human beings, on calling us, "O children of Adam," tying to a great-grandfather of ours that he honored by asking the angels to bow out of respect for Adam. We see the kind of honor Allah has given our species, our race. We also find the Quran and Sunnah and the kind of respect it also gives people's urf, people's custom, so much so that urf is a source of law. That in our, Qawaid al-Fiqhiyya al-Kulliyya, one of our universal maxims is this al-ada muhakkama, that people's cultural practice has the weight of law, is a source of Islamic law, even though it didn't originate. But the fact that Allah has created us into nations, into tribes, lita'arafu, that we get to know each other, and that by me knowing you and knowing your customary laws, that some of those customary laws that are beneficial, I will practice, and if you're a Muslim, some of your cultural laws remain as Islamic law. that respect given to people's cultural identity that they feel so dear about, but also the prohibition of asabiya, the prohibition of looking down on people just because they belong to another tribe, another clan, another race, another ethnic group. And the Prophet even, regarding statements that were prejudiced or racist as being signs of jahiliyyah, that these are signs of the times of ignorance, these are signs of before Islam. And how he, when one of his wives made a racist statement, just described Safiya as, you mean that Jewish lady? Just that type of thing. The Prophet actually, it said, decided not to stay in her room for up to 3 months, some say up to 4 months. He took it so seriously that you can't bring this way of looking down on people into the religion of Islam. We find the term Ahl al-Kitab. You would have thought, because in many religions, you are either with us or you are with all the rest. But we find just the honor given to Ahl al-Kitab, people of earlier revelation, not being called mushrikun, idol worshippers, or people who don't have a religion, but the term Ahl al-Kitab is actually associating them with Kitab, with revelation to earlier prophets, as a way of honoring people of other faiths. And some would even say, because there's a consensus among Muslim jurists that part of the military exemption tax on non-Muslims is that they pay jizya in lieu of joining the army to defend the Muslim Ummah. However, part of those people who are exempted from paying jizya are the clergy of non-Muslims. That because you respect your clergy, they themselves are not considered people who would be expected ordinarily to come and defend the community. And Islam, even where it is in control, respects that position of non-Muslims. We find the teachings against the mistreatment of slaves in all forms, slavery by all names, anything that dehumanizes people, the reward in freeing of slaves, the blocking of slavery coming into, all the rules that all seem to be targeted at removing this dehumanizing practice of ending up with the emancipation of slavery. And lastly, the understanding of scholars that human beings have rights. Today we talk about fundamental human rights that accrue because you're a human being, whether you're male or female, whether you are crippled or have some physical, you are all humans and your life is all sacred. And so I think there's so much in the Quran, in the Sunnah, when somebody approaches issues of justice, issues of equality. We find the Quran actually, when it comes to Quran and Sunnah, teachings regarding, and we touch this in istishab, of justice, that the asl fil adl, the asl, the presumption when it comes to justice is equality in the treatment of people. I'd like us to move on to the last one for now, which is this issue of mal, of property. What is the evidence that the Quran and the Sunnah consider the preservation and promotion of wealth a fundamental maqasid of Sharia? Alam Nasir.
I think Islam from the very beginning has acknowledged the value and the relevance of wealth and wealth creation. And that is why you find Islam always trying to strike a balance in admonishing Muslims about, much as you struggle to worship Allah and to struggle for your hereafter, don't neglect your wealth, the worldly affair. Don't neglect trying to compete in wealth creation and trying to scout and find something that will improve your sustenance. And again, if you look at how Islam associate or attach some privilege and recognition to people that are wealthy and affluent, and gave them lots of opportunities of getting themselves even into paradise, then you will understand the significance and the importance of wealth. Look at how the hadith of Rasulullah which talked about the wealthy people have already taken all the reward. Why? Because of the contribution and the value that they bring and they give to the society. In fact, Rasulullah while recognizing the value of wealth creation and wealthy people, and that means you have to find wealth, you have to scout for it, you have to create it. He said, "Al yadul ulya khayrun wa ahab ila Allah min yadi sufla." That the hand that is at the top, the hand that is given, is more lovable, is more respected, is more appreciated in the eyes of Allah than that which is collected. This, I think, is instructive. This, I think, is very important to always remember and to think about. If you look at the life of Rasulullah and his companions, look at what Abu Bakr did on several occasions, how Uthman did a lot of things that earned him paradise on several occasions. It is only if you are wealthy, as it happens during the time of Rasulullah, that Rasulullah will say, whoever buys this particular thing for the benefit of the entire Muslim society, his reward is Jannah. Whoever did this, whoever contribute this, whoever, and look at Quran is full of praises of people who contribute, who give sadaqah, who help in trying to promote society with their wealth, because Islam has acknowledged from the very beginning, as I said, the significance and the role that wealth played. And that is even why you find a lot of stipulations regarding punishment of people who tamper with the wealth of other people. Look at the had of stealing somebody's wealth. Look at the had around issues of brigandage, issues of robbery. And these are very severe punishments. Why? Because of the value of wealth, the value of wealth creation. And not only that, because of the importance of wealth in the sustenance and sustainability of society, or in the management or leadership of the society. Look at the provisions of Islam around issues of wealth management and wealth creation. Look at the issue of inheritance, for example. If wealth is not something that is important, you cannot find Quran going to the detail of how to even distribute wealth, how to distribute wealth. And not only that, Quran acknowledged the implication or the problem of inequality in the society. And that is why it made arrangement of bridging that gap by taking from the wealthy people and sharing it to the people that are extremely rich, people that are affluent, because it creates animosity if you live in a society and the gap keeps increasing, and there is no that compassion, that sense of rahmah, that sense of humanity that actually happened between this category of people. That is why Islam made a provision, made an arrangement of wealth redistribution in the society, in the form of zakat, in the form of sadaqah, and it was calculated, it was stipulated clearly on different kind of products and resources and wealth. I think this demonstrates the significance of wealth and wealth creation and wealth redistribution in the society. Not only that, look at how Islam provided laws that guide businesses, business transaction. Because of the significance of businesses, building businesses, how Islam come up with regulations as to how people are going to relate with justice, with respect, and use it as a way of promoting the society. So I think this demonstrates, or this explains to us how Islam looked at wealth, how Islam encouraged preservation, promotion of wealth and wealth creation in general. Allahu Alam.
MashaAllah. I think when one looks at, just what you've said, certain hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, the honest merchant, the honest businessman will wake up side by side with the martyrs who died defending society. We appreciate the importance of business that is honest and ethical. The Prophet saying that the most wholesome thing you can consume is what you earned from your own effort. Abdullah bin Umar, one of the great companions of the Prophet ﷺ, said, next to dying in defense of the community, I pray I die doing business. We see how business is so critical to the life of communities. As you've mentioned, so many rules and regulations in Islamic finance. Probably the biggest books of the biggest chapters in the books of fiqh are the books to do with mal and property and buyu and Islamic finance. because it's just so important that wealth is protected from gambling, from speculation that is baseless, from various forms of unequitable risk sharing, as we find in things like riba, interest and usury. The fact that zakat is one of the pillars of Islam that every Muslim aspires to pay. However, when you look at how much wealth do you need to acquire before you pay zakat, the nisab of how much you should have sitting is really significant. When we look at pillars of Islam like Hajj, to be able to afford to go for Hajj and leave for Hajj without debts, without leaving your family in want, it's expected that Muslims would do their best to earn enough to leave sadaqatun jariyah, good things that would help subsequent communities, awqaf, the issue of getting endowments that become a source of reward even after you've left. I think you've left no doubt that all the verses of the Quran, all the hadith related to this topic point to why scholars considered the preservation of wealth as a fundamental maqasid and objective of Sharia. And as we've said, these are all interrelated, and so there's debates among scholars regarding which is even the most important of these maqasid. Some say it's faith, others say, but you can't have faith without life, and without life you can't have any of the others. But it just points to the fact that these are all of critical importance, and as we've already mentioned, each of these maqasid that we have mentioned have those aspects that are daruriyat, those aspects that are absolutely vital needs, those that are less important, the hajiyat, though very important in supporting the daruriyat, and those that are tahsiniyat. I'd like to end here by actually also saying how sometimes we look at the maqasid in our prayers. What did the Prophet, what did the Quran teach us to pray for? Ilman nafi'an, rizqan wasi'an, and all these maqasid we find are actually in the prayers that Allah wants us to pray for. And the best prayer, the Prophet said, is the one that you believe has been answered and you pursue it. You go to realize these prayers. I'd like to stop here and thank you all for your contributions. Jazakumullahu khairan. Until next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.